Few figures in Western Australia's modern underworld have shaped the region's bikie landscape as forcefully, controversially, and relentlessly as Troy Mercanti. For more than 2 decades, his name has been tied to gang feuds, internal betrayals, and a series of escalating conflicts that reshaped the power dynamics between several of the country's most notorious outlaw motorcycle clubs. To police, he was one of the state's most recognisable bikies. To fellow gang members, he was alternately a loyal soldier, a strategic operator, and ultimately a divisive figure whose decisions ignited one of Western Australia's most intense interclub wars. Troy Desmond Mercanti was born in 1967 into a successful Italian-Australian family whose prosperity stood in sharp contrast to the criminal life he later embraced. His father, Michael Mercanti, arrived from Italy in 1952 and built a thriving shoe repair business from a single kiosk opened in Dianella Plaza in 1963. Over the next 2 decades, the operation grew into Mike's Multi-Service, a multi-million-dollar retail and wholesale enterprise with kiosks across Perth. Michael and his wife, Zibble, raised 4 sons, all of whom spent time working in the family business. By all accounts, a stable career in the thriving shoe empire was readily available to Troy, but by his early 20s, he had already turned away from that path, immersing himself instead in the world of outlaw motorcycle gangs. Troy quickly became a rising figure in the Coffin Cheaters, one of Western Australia's oldest and most entrenched bikie organisations. He spent a decade consolidating his place within the club, but it wasn't until 2005 that his name truly exploded onto front pages nationwide. 3 days before Australia Day, a clandestine meeting took place beneath the Metro nightclub in Northbridge. It brought together Troy and Nabil Debag, a member of the Scorpion Boys. The atmosphere was tense, and what began as a discussion rapidly collapsed into violence. In the confines of the club's basement, Nabil attacked first, stabbing and slashing Troy across the neck and chest. Bleeding heavily and fighting for control, Troy drew a firearm and shot Nabil multiple times, striking him 5 times and ending the assault. Both men survived and were taken to hospital. Both were charged. Troy with unlawful wounding for the shooting, Nabil with causing grievous bodily harm for the knife assault. Ultimately, a jury acquitted them both, and although Troy walked free, his reputation as one of Western Australia's most volatile bikies was firmly established. If 2005 made Troy notorious, 2007 cemented his reputation for raw, uncontrolled violence, and set in motion events that would drag Perth's bikie scene into one of its most dangerous chapters. The first major incident came in May 2007 at Northbridge's Geisha Bar, where a confrontation between Troy and patron Gregory Festonish escalated with terrifying speed. After a brief exchange of words, Troy delivered a single devastating punch that knocked Festonish unconscious and shattered his jaw. A jury rejected Troy's self-defense claim and later sentenced him to 28 months in prison. But before that conviction, an even more consequential incident unfolded, the spark that would trigger interstate hostilities. In Osborne Park, police found senior Comanchero Steve Shorty Milentishkovsky bleeding heavily from the nose, having been attacked by Troy and an associate. The Comancheros, bound by a strict code of silence, refused to identify the attackers. Their retaliation, however, was swift. Less than 2 weeks after Milenkovsky's beating, the Coffin Cheaters Bayswater clubhouse was firebombed. A secondary building was drenched with fuel and set alight, destroying up to a dozen motorcycles and causing roughly $500,000 in damage. The attack stunned the Coffin Cheaters. Most had no idea who was responsible, but Troy's associates recognized the opening shots of a war. Hours after the firebombing, a fish and chip shop owned by Milenkovsky's brother in Yokarn was torched in retaliation. 3 weeks later, the violence travelled east. A peace meeting in Sydney between senior Comancheros and Troy's friends from the Finks bikie gang collapsed in seconds when gunfire erupted, sending Comanchero's boss, Mick Howie, fleeing. The failed sit-down locked both sides into a deepening feud. By early 2008, the conflict had become so tangled and volatile that the Perth-based Sword Boys street gang stepped in to mediate. Their efforts brought the Comancheros and the Coffin Cheaters to the table, where Coffin Cheaters members learned for the first time that Troy Mercanti had been secretly dealing with the rival Finks. Within bikie culture, this was an unforgivable breach, a direct violation of the club's constitution and a betrayal of its internal hierarchy. The response was immediate and violent. In February 2008, Troy was lured by text message to a goat farm near Moore River under the pretense of celebrating his 10-year anniversary with the Coffin Cheaters. Instead, he walked into an ambush. Several Coffin Cheaters set upon him, beating him and stripping him of all club insignia and memorabilia. Expulsion, on bad terms, is one of the gravest humiliations an outlaw motorcycle club can impose, and in Troy's case, it opened the door to an even more explosive chapter. Within months, he did exactly what the Coffin Cheaters had feared most. He joined the Finks. Worse still, he helped establish the Finks' New Perth chapter, bringing with him loyalists and organisational structure. The rupture deepened when Troy's partner, Tammy Kingdon, stole $54,000 from trust funds for the children of 2 deceased Coffin Cheaters. The money was used to buy a Balga property that became the Finks' new clubhouse. Kingdon was later charged, and the theft became symbolic of Troy's break with his former club. Troy himself, when summoned before an Australian Crime Commission examiner over the theft, refused to answer questions, earning an additional 12-month jail term on top of his sentence for the geisha bar assault. Although the war smouldered through 2009, it erupted dramatically in October 2010, while Troy was still behind bars. At the Kwinana Motorplex, during a daytime motorcycle drag racing event advertised as family-friendly, members of the Finks, Coffin Cheaters and Club Deros crossed paths in a public staging area where bikes were being prepared. The spark that set off the clash was reportedly minor. A Fink spat toward a Coffin Cheater. Within seconds, the confrontation escalated into a brutal brawl involving fists, knives and eventually firearms, with roughly 20 gang members caught in the chaos. Finks member David Maripodi, one of Troy's closest allies, was shot in the leg. Stephen Wallace, a convicted heroin trafficker, had 3 fingers severed during the brawl and suffered multiple stab wounds. A third Fink was also seriously injured. Coffin Cheaters were also hurt, but, true to bikie code, none cooperated with police. To authorities, the Motorplex brawl represented the peak of the Coffin Cheaters Finks war, a conflict directly rooted in the expulsion and subsequent actions of Troy Mercanti. Even from his prison cell, his influence over the bikie landscape remained undeniable. After being released from prison in August 2011 for the geisha bar assault, Troy Mercanti remained out of the spotlight only briefly. By February 2013, he was once again back before the courts, this time facing one of the most serious legal battles of his life. In the district court, Mercanti was tried over allegations that he had subjected his former partner, Tammy Kingdon, the mother of his 2 sons, to years of violent abuse. Their relationship had spanned 15 years, and according to Kingdon's testimony, it was marked by control, intimidation, drug-fueled chaos, and repeated assaults that escalated in severity over time. During the trial, Kingdon described a turbulent life shaped by Troy's unpredictable temper and domineering presence. She said she tolerated his behaviour largely for their children, even visiting him twice a week during an earlier 16-month prison term. But she told the court that the situation worsened dramatically once he came home just before Christmas in 2006. According to her evidence, he returned after days of disappearing, showing signs of intoxication and sleep deprivation. Inside their bedroom, she said he assaulted her with punches to the head and body, then followed her into the bathroom to continue the attack. Later that day, she said he intimidated her at a family gathering and struck her again, knocking out 1 tooth and loosening 2 others. Police later obtained her medical records to compare hospital visits with the incidents she described. Defense counsel attempted to argue her injuries came from intoxication or accidents, but Kingdon insisted Troy inflicted them. Her version was supported by a key witness, Troy's mother, who told the court she saw him strike Kingdon during the same Christmas Day incident. That evidence proved to be a turning point. 2 weeks into proceedings, facing the weight of testimony from both his former partner and his mother, Mercanti abandoned his initial denials and entered guilty pleas to 3 counts of assault and 1 count of causing grievous bodily harm. In March 2013, District Court Judge Simon Stone sentenced him to 6 years and 10 months in prison. During sentencing, the court characterised Troy as a man who had exerted dominance and control through violence, threats and degradation. The judge found that Troy had shown no remorse and expressed concern that even a restraining order might not sufficiently protect Kingdon. After nearly 7 years in prison, Troy was released in January 2019 under a strict 2-year post-sentence supervision order. He was banned from drinking alcohol, entering most licensed venues, associating with outlaw bikies, contacting Tammy Kingdon, or possessing weapons. These restrictions came amid shifting gang dynamics in Western Australia. While Troy was incarcerated, the Finks motorcycle club had been absorbed into the Mongols, signalling the expansion of the notorious American-founded gang into Australia. Upon his release, Mercanti himself reportedly joined the Mongols' Western Australian chapter, cementing his position in the state's evolving outlaw motorcycle underworld. In February 2020, police launched a major operation against the Mongols, arresting 7 people and seizing drugs, weapons, cash and contraband. Troy was among those detained, accused of breaching his supervision order by associating with bikies. By 2023, he had repeatedly returned to court for further breaches, including shopping with a club associate and attending gatherings where other members were present. Although some links were contested, the courts found them to be violations. In August 2023, he was fined $9,000 for 9 breaches and again penalised for displaying Mongols insignia and meeting members despite bans. By then, WA had introduced new anti-consorting laws targeting outlaw motorcycle gangs, prohibiting members from interacting or displaying club identifiers. Troy became the first person charged under the regime. Police issued him a dispersal notice listing 31 people he could not associate with, which he openly defied, arriving at court in a shirt mocking the Attorney General and branding the laws unconstitutional. In 2024, he won a major legal victory when South Australian police dropped charges against him and 2 associates for allegedly consorting at the Adelaide Fringe Festival. A magistrate found the claims baseless and ordered the state to pay their legal costs. Troy's notoriety returned to the forefront in May 2024 when he was arrested at his home in Karinyup following allegations of serious SA. Police claimed the incident occurred at his mother's residence earlier that day, after a night in Northbridge with friends and associates. Detectives charged him with multiple counts of SA. A second woman later came forward with an unrelated historical allegation, further complicating the case. Within days, however, the case collapsed. The primary complainant withdrew her allegations, expressing fear for her safety due to perceived threats from people associated with Troy. Police formally dropped the charges, but noted they would reconsider the matter should the woman choose to pursue it again. Although the investigation was discontinued, the episode added another layer of controversy to Troy's already complex public profile. Troy Mercanti's name returned to the headlines in an unexpected way in mid-2025, this time not for crime, but for combat sports. At the age of 58, and after years of legal entanglements and ongoing police scrutiny, Troy stepped into the boxing ring for his first professional fight at World Siam Stadium in Bangkok. Denied a combat sports license in Western Australia due to his criminal history, he had taken his ambitions overseas. After months of intensive training and a strict regime that saw him shed significant weight, Mercanti knocked out Thai fighter Kwinana Motorplex just 23 seconds into the first round. The victory made international headlines, remarkable not only because of his age, but also because it highlighted the unusual trajectory of a man long known for his violent exploits in Western Australia's outlaw biker scene. Supporters and Mongols associates celebrated the win, while critics argued that Troy continued to use high-profile platforms to enhance his public profile despite his controversial past. Meanwhile, Troy's legal troubles in Perth are far from over. He remains an active figure in the Mongols and is awaiting trial over an alleged fight at a Como pub involving another bikie. He pleaded not guilty and is due to face trial in 2026, adding yet another chapter to a life defined by a string of high-profile legal battles, gang conflicts and public controversies. From headline-making criminality to an international sporting stage, Troy Mercanti's story continues to unfold in ways few could have predicted. Troy Mercanti's journey from family business heir to notorious bikie reflects more than a personal choice. It mirrors the violent, insular world of outlaw motorcycle gangs that has long gripped Western Australia. While his early exploits made headlines, they also cemented his reputation as a figure both feared and scrutinised by law enforcement. Decades on, Troy remains a reminder of the fine line between loyalty, power and chaos in the bikie underworld, a line he crossed and never looked back from. Make sure you let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. If you want more stories from the Australian underworld, please consider subscribing and liking this video. It really helps me out and helps the channel grow. Till next time, take care.